This marks the beginning of the fourth week of Operation Epic Fury. Here are some of the latest developments in the conflict. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard told the Senate Intelligence Committee the Iranian regime is degraded but still intact. Iran's top security official was killed in an Israeli strike. With targeted takedowns, there are reports that some Iranians say a sense of disorder is starting to take hold. Efforts continue to build a coalition of support for shipping through the critical Strait of Hormuz, but movement of oil through the critical passage is at a standstill while prices and pressure mount. Scott Thuman has more.
At least 17 ships, including 10 oil tankers, have been attacked in or near the Strait of Hormuz since the start of Operation Epic Fury on February 28. The narrow waterway is just over 20 miles wide, Iran using small boats and especially drones to target tankers.
About 1/5 of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz every day. And that's roughly equivalent to all of the oil that's consumed in the United States, even though the United States doesn't actually get its oil from there. So it is having a huge impact upon oil markets right now.
Duncan Wood is an expert on international energy and trade and a fellow at the nonpartisan Wilson Center in Washington.
A lot of people are going to say, well, if we're not getting our oil from there, why are we so impacted?
Right. So it's not a question of supply, it's a question of markets becoming tighter. And of course, because these are private companies that are producing the oil here in the United States, they can sell that oil wherever they like around the world. And of course, demand is rising in places that traditionally got their oil from the Middle East. And so we're seeing that there is obviously increasing demand and certain parts of the world willing to pay a lot more to get their hands on oil at this point in time.
Since the outbreak of the Iran conflict, international oil and energy markets have been in a state of high-altitude turbulence. The impact has been swift. In the United States, despite being a net energy exporter, retail gas prices on average up more than 90 cents. Asia, which relies on the Middle East for nearly 60% of its crude imports, now the epicenter of an energy scramble as nations enact emergency measures just to keep the lights on.
The price shock that we're experiencing right now is relatively moderate here in the U.S., but there is a risk, of course, that things could get a lot worse if we don't see a rapid resolution.
President Trump promising last week both a resolution and reduction in gas prices soon.
As soon as that war's over, which will be soon, your prices are going to drop like a rock. You watch. I've been very...
But maybe not so fast. American oil executives delivered a bleak message to Trump officials in recent days. The energy crisis the Iran war has unleashed is likely to get worse if the flow of oil through the strait remains strained. In an effort to boost oil supplies, Trump calling on the new government in Venezuela, installed after the U.S. captured President Maduro, to work with U.S. oil companies to increase production quickly.
Is there a benefit to the United States that comes from having maybe a little bit better relations with Venezuela so that when everything is going on, as it is now in Iran, we can kind of not worry so much about the brunt?
I think so. I mean, I think that the more production there is outside of a region like the Middle East, the more stable global markets are going to be. And certainly the United States' willingness to tolerate instability in the Middle East is much higher if they can get their oil from elsewhere.
So if we're seeing what's happening in Iran and Venezuela, there are some people who want to connect some dots and say, this is part of a larger overall strategy to weaken China. Accurate or a step too far?
I can't say whether or not there is an actual strategy, but certainly both of these actions do weaken China. This is not just about taking out the leadership of the Iranian regime. It's having long-term consequences for strategic competition between the United States and China and between the United States and Russia as well.
You mentioned China. They import more than 10 million barrels a day, and until recently, Iran and Venezuela were two of their key suppliers. Obviously, the game has changed a bit. What does this all mean for China?
China is deeply worried. Their overall energy costs are going to rise. Their energy insecurity is going to rise. And that's going to mean that there are higher costs for manufacturing. And we're already seeing that beginning to play out even before the actions by the United States in Iran. The Chinese government recently announced growth targets of less than 5% for the first time in many, many years.
The impact of the strait may be straining international relations. President Trump says his much-anticipated trip to China this month will be postponed by several weeks as he focuses his attention on Operation Epic Fury. For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman.